how's it going, team? So, something a little different today. Something that I'm interested in starting on the podcast, just to sort of give it some variability, if that's the right word. So, something that I've always wanted to do, and something that I'm obviously clearly passionate about, because I wrote a book myself, which will be the topic of this podcast today. So, apologies if you're already bored about hearing of it. But yeah, so something that I wanted to do with the podcast is to create another segment, which is essentially a book club. I'm sure I'll come up with some catchy name, or think of some catchy name eventually, but for now, it's just a book club. And I thought the best place to start would be my own book. So the book that I wrote that sort of started this journey, which is Habits, Happiness and Health. So if you've not seen the book, you've not checked out the book, the link will be in the description. So I'm going to sort of give a brief overview as to why I wrote this book and how this book came about. So self-development and self-improvement has always been a thing that is a massive part of my life. Probably not all my life, probably from the age of maybe 17 onwards, it was something that became sort of at the forefront, something that I thought about consciously to do. And for years, I listened to all the podcasts, listened to all the interviews, I read the books, listened to the books. And something that always stood out was the fact that the majority of these books they'd be great, don't get me wrong. Like, an example would be Extreme Ownership by Jocko. Great book, great insight to the mind of someone and situations that, the average Jack, pardon the pun, could never even dream of. So obviously to have that insight was brilliant. But I'd found myself reading that book, enjoying the stories, enjoying, the insights to being in like Iraq and Afghanistan and what it was to lead like a SEAL team. But, the conclusions and the sort of comparisons that were made on like the last page of like a 40-page chapter that were giving you or myself the insight as to what we can take from that and how we can apply it in our everyday lives. It was just that, it was a page. And then the themes that you see quite a bit in self-help books and self-development books. And I was like, maybe there must be, some sort of fluff-free way of doing this. And myself not being a confident writer or a good writer, some will say, just sort of a bucket list thing. I was like, it'd be pretty cool to write a book. Did it a bit of a, cheating way, self-publishing. Some people will obviously hold their nose up at that. But as soon as I found out that self-publishing was a option, it was just a case of, fuck it, grab the bull by the horns, and what's the worst that can happen? Some people can say some nasty things. I'm big enough and ugly enough to do that. So I did it, and I created this book. And that's essentially what it is. It's essentially a fluff-free guide to sort of habits, happiness and health, if you couldn't get it from the title. And, looking into what I perceived as habits, and when you create positive habits, it then benefits your happiness, and then that benefits your health, and it's sort of that cyclical nature of that. And I was like, what are the key things that I've learned in sort of the X amount of books I've read and the X amount of TED Talks I've listened to and podcasts that I've listened to. And it was sort of collating these things together. So like, just looking at the table of contents, chapter 1, creating habits to transform health and happiness. What are habits? Sort of getting the science behind that, which is obviously important. I mean, some people don't appreciate, or, well, not appreciate might be the wrong word, but some people probably don't even give a shit about sort of, the neuroplasticity and the pathways that are built in the brain to create a habit. They just want the answers. And I think, unfortunately, what you see with a lot of people, and something that we discuss a lot on the podcast, especially when you get coaches on, is that it does require sort of knowledge and understanding of what of where you want to be, you need the knowledge and the understanding to essentially get there. You can't just expect these things to appear. You can't just expect them to happen without sort of putting the effort in and knowing how to do it. The psychological perspective, the benefit of positive habits, and then the effect on health. So breaking down into more niche things, sort of from my own journey of like depression, sort of being overweight, being miserable, them sort of things. So like, the three that I picked out for me, which again, I have had people pull me up and sort of say that this isn't everything that habits and happiness and health are about. And that's fair enough. Everyone is different. Everyone has their own opinion. Everyone is valid to their own take on these things. But I wrote this book, so it's sort of my view and my opinion as to what would create these things. And to be fair, sort of working in fitness and leisure in that industry, they're all reoccurring themes. They're all reoccurring themes that you see with things and sort of get to know that make people happier, healthier. And that's sleep, which I've mentioned before, nutrition, hydration, sort of putting them as a combination, and then sort of exercise and like the habitual investment that exercise is and the benefit that that has on oneself. So then, it was like throwing challenges and pitfalls, practical tips for habit formation, that sort of thing, and sort of using my insight and what I'd done for my own outcomes. And then chapter 2 was sort of healthy habits, creating a vibrant life through healthy habits. Again, going into the more specific topics that were covered before, so like the physical benefits of regular exercise, the mental benefits of regular exercise, daily movement. A big thing that people think is, oh, I go to the gym an hour a day. That's all I need to do. And I was definitely sort of guilty of that and thinking that if you go to the gym, that's more than enough of what you need to essentially be healthier, etc., etc. But when you learn about these things and these conversations that I've had a lot, is that that's such a small percentage of what actually helps with our sort of health, exercise, fitness. If you're on a weight loss journey and you go to the gym for 45 minutes or an hour a day, but then you sedentary for the rest of that day, the rest of the day, the majority is going to build up and cause the problems that you're facing. So it's stuff about like getting your steps in, getting outdoors, getting out in nature. And again, these things are sort of very basic, very not rudimentary, but the things that I've not wrote this book to reinvent the wheel. I've not written this book to, challenge any particular narratives that are already out of there. This book is sort of a friendly guide to be like, these are the things that you will find in other books. These are the things that will help the majority of people. And it's just put into something that you don't need to lose 40 minutes of your night every night for 2 weeks to do it. You could probably get through this in a day and a bit, depending on how fast of a read you are. I think it's 95 pages. I mean, the text isn't, particularly tiny. I've been sort of friendly to the people who, like myself, have to squint to read these things. But yeah, it's sort of like, if we look at, going into strategies for improving sleep hygiene. So sleep hygiene is something that a lot of people don't know about. So sleep hygiene isn't like, oh, I have a shower before I go to bed. Sleep hygiene is sort of the routine that you create with sleep to sort of ready your mind and ready your body and sort of give it the signal to be like, right, you started washing your face, you started brushing your teeth, you've put your nose strip on, you've turned out all the lights, you've not looked at any blue lights for the last half an hour, you've got your book out, you're in bed, blah, 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 X, Y, Z, sort of building that up. So, like, strategies that I've sort of said is set the scene, stick to a routine, cut down on the stimulating stuff, dial down on screen time, things I've just mentioned. mindfulness and meditation, for me, if you're someone whose mind is 3 million miles an hour constantly, they're very good ways of doing that and sort of dialing out. Avoid naps, check your mattress and your pillows. I mean, it's such simple things like that that you wouldn't even think about. We think of our issues as being very complex, and if the issue is complex, it must require a complex solution. And that's definitely the case sometimes. Like, sometimes the answer to a complex problem is a simple one. So it's sort of assessing these things. And again, people have said and pointed out that maybe it's simple, it's simplistic, and doesn't necessarily get into the nitty gritty. But that will be going against sort of why I wrote the book and what was my intention with it. So going on to the next bit and just going over the book and sort of its contents a bit more. A big thing for me and sort of my personal journey was sort of moderation. I am an absolute stickler for going a million miles an hour into something. As soon as I get like a sniff and I think I enjoy it, look at the podcast, the lights, the mic, the stand, that thing of sort of all the gear, no idea, could definitely sum me up in some areas of my life. And getting older, and definitely something that's only recent, and I'd say in the last few years, is trying to learn moderation and develop moderation. And it is a balancing act. It's sort of knowing when to push, knowing when to pull back. Mindset's a big thing when that comes to, moderation, mindfulness, being aware of yourself, and sort of realising that you don't need to make massive steps to make big changes. A lot of the time, it's small steps that make big changes. Compounding, building up, starting small, earning the right to move on. A lot of what we do and a lot of what I did was sort of, jumping the gun, not earning sort of the landmarks of progress. So for an example, like running, I would definitely be, probably still am to a degree, the sort of person that's like, I could run a half marathon. Easy. But in reality, I probably could, but I'd fuck myself up and I'd probably suffer the consequences of such a stupid action. But, you earn the right to do something like that. You go out and you do your tempo runs, you do your short runs, you do your long runs, you do your easy runs. You learn about your gait and what sort of pace is your pace, and then training around them and things like that. It's a complex thing. And that's obviously might be a piss poor example, but that is what applies to everyday life. If you was a weightlifter, and you was like, right, my goal is to deadlift 200 kilos, and you've never deadlifted 90 kilos before. If you go in and try and, deadlift 100 and blow your back out, well, you've not earned it, have you? You're never going to earn that. And it's sort of about small steps, big changes, and understanding the fact that we have to start somewhere. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you're never going to get where you want to be. You've just got to do what you have to earn to be there. Mindful living was another thing that I covered. That was sort of one that was difficult for me going into it. Something that, I'd done a little bit of meditating, breath work, so sort of doing the research, speaking to other people, speaking to the editor of the book, and sort of creating something that wasn't just wish-wash and sort of bullshitty. That was one of the more difficult chapters to sort of create, but it came out well. I learned a lot in that, about mindful breathing techniques, more about gratitude journaling, and a big one for me was sort of digital detox strategies, which is what we cover in the book, and sort of learning that, as good as technology is, and, I'm doing this podcast off my phone now, and I'll be uploading it through my phone and social media and tablets and computers. Are we necessarily created to sort of deal with that every day? I know I've touched on it with people on the podcast, and it's just, there's so much information overload. There's so much sort of instant dopamine access that we sort of just become zombied, and it becomes an extension of our being. And I think when you learn to remove that dependency from your life, your mind, your well-being, like mentally, will benefit tenfold. Sort of social media detoxes in particular are incredibly beneficial, and unless you've ever done one, you will definitely never appreciate it. So, recommendation from this would be let people know. Let people know you're going off social media for a while if they want to access it. The thing is, you'll realise how many people actually contact you for important things and how much is just absolute bullshit and consuming your day for no apparent reason. And I think, if you contact the people you suspect that you will speak to or need to speak to and give them your personal number if they don't have it already, you'll be surprised how many people would reach out unless it's an emergency. So I think a big worry of people is that I'd miss out on everything. I wouldn't know what's going on in the world. But everything you need to know what's going on will be told to you if it's like an emergency. So yeah, let people know. Let them know how to contact you in case there is said emergency. And then just remove it. Remove it from your phones. Just for like, even if it's a weekend to start. I think the longest I did was like a week. And it was brilliant. It was so good. And then I remember coming back off that week and sort of creating, what's the word I'm looking for? Not roadblocks, but making it difficult for myself just to sort of mindlessly go on social media for like a dopamine fix and a dome scroll. Scroll? That's a new word. Scroll. And sort of the best thing that I did for that was delete the apps off my phone and log in through Safari or whatever internet browser you use. Doesn't have to be exclusively Safari. But making that sort of additional caveat and making that additional sort of level to entry would be a deterrent for me. Because I'd be like, oh, fuck this, can't be bothered signing in again. It's not that important why I'm going on. It'd stop me and make me think why I'm actually doing this. That's a pretty extreme way of doing it. Deleting the apps and things like that. Again, something that I've mentioned in the podcast is One Breath. That's just an app you can download. And that literally makes you take like 4 seconds before it gives you access to the app. You have to do like a deep breath. And it's like, do you want to access? Yes or no? And sometimes you'll be like, oh, fucking hell, I'm just doing this out of force of habit. But yeah, try that. I would recommend that highly to anybody to just give it a whirl. So there were 6 chapters. I've done this terribly. This is just me sort of seeing how this would go. Practice is probably shite. Chapter 5 was crafting a joyful life, going over the happiness equation, building a supportive environment, overcoming obstacles and sustaining change, time management, which is massive, and tracking your progress and adjusting habits. So circumstances change constantly. And the reason that I asked the question that I always ask guests on the podcast is like, what's one habit you'd love to sort of reintroduce if you used to do it? Is because we've never stuck to every habit we've set to do. Well, I've not. I've never met anybody who has. Fair play to anyone who has. But they just drop off. Sometimes consciously, sometimes subconsciously. And, they need to. Sometimes circumstances change, but people can be pretty hard on themselves and think, oh, well, I've stopped meal prepping. That means I'm a failure as a person. All right, well, yeah, okay, you stopped meal prepping. Why have you stopped meal prepping? Oh, well, I've got a new job. My commute's 30 minutes longer. I can't really find the time on the Wednesday that I used to do it anymore. All right, fair enough. Well, those are sort of an extrinsic factor as to why that's happening. Just because you can't do it on the day that you did it or when you did it doesn't mean that, you have to be quote unquote a failure and then stop. I think we are definitely creatures that just, if our habit or our routine changes ever so slightly, we just wash up and get rid. We're just like, right, well, I can't do this anymore, so I'm never doing it again. Not the fact that, right, well, like I said, I've got a new job, my commute's changed. I can't do it on the Wednesday. But because of my new job, I can actually do it on the Tuesday if I move these things around, because you have to assess if it's an important habit or an important thing in your life and then change it. We can only answer ourselves, can only answer our own questions. You know, we can look to podcasts, books, things like that for guidance and help. But in reality, all of our problems are unique because we are unique, and that's not being too hippy dippy bullshit about it. But, you know, we do have similar problems as other people, but you as an individual have unique circumstances. So, you know, generalised help and generalised information is perfect, it's brilliant, it's there as a guidance. But just because, you know, Joe Blogs says, well, I meal prep 7 till 8 every Monday, every Thursday, never fail, never miss, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. Why aren't you doing it? Well, why aren't you doing it? You know, if there's legitimate reasons to us why you're doing it, that shouldn't deem you being a failure. But if you just sat there, you know, scratching your balls and watching the last Netflix series, then there's the difference. And only you can answer that question. Only you can sort of, you know, be truly honest with yourself. Sort of took a deterrent there as to where we was going. But yeah, but then that sort of goes to the point of overcoming obstacles and sustaining change, building a supportive environment, massive. And I sort of finished it with like the road to lasting happiness, conclusions, the references to some of the studies that were made in there. I love the book. Would I change it? Slightly. The thing that I would do differently, the things that I can do differently, that's the beauty of being self-published, is sort of you have the ability to alter and evolve whatever it is you've created. And, you know, the feedback and the reviews that I've had have been great, bar a couple, obviously, but, you know, not everyone will enjoy what you do. Not everyone will enjoy this. I don't reckon a lot of people enjoy this because I've just waffled for 20 odd minutes. But yeah, this is just sort of a trial as to discussing books. Sort of don't really want to give away too much of what's in this book because obviously it's out there for people to buy and see. Yeah, check out the book. Let me know what you think. Let me know what I could do better, what resonates with you, what helped you if you've read the book. I'd love to hear how you found the book. Drop me a message. Tell me what you think. Tell me what could be better. Tell me what helped. There's nothing crazier than when people say, oh yeah, I've done this out of your book, I've read this out of your book. Oh, this about this about that. It's a very surreal moment for me. I don't know if anyone else who's ever wrote a book or done this feels that way, but for me it's a very sort of rewarding experience because this is why I set out to do this, is to help people. Even, you know, if the book helped one person to help them change their life in some capacity, well, that's brilliant, do you know what I mean? And I think it's done that. I think I've seen from what people have said to me and, you know, come and had little chit chats with me. That or the blowing smoke at my house, either or, is nice. But yeah, it's good to be knocked down a peg or two occasionally. But yeah, habits, happiness and health. Creating mindful habits to make massive changes for a healthier and happier life. And it does what it says on the tin. It's fluff free. It avoids the sort of, not mistakes, that'd be wrong, because who am I to say, you know, these multi-million-pound bestsellers have made mistakes. I'm no one to say that, that's who. But from my own personal opinion and preference, I wrote a book that I would like to read. Straight to the point, has the information that's needed, and can provide context that might be able to create a better life. And that's what this is at the end of this project, this business venture, if you could call it that. So yeah, shout out Vidibus, the best about. the goats, thank you for supporting the podcast. Thank you for supporting all this. Check out the website, www.jackmckean.co.uk. Check out the book, Habits, Happiness and Health. There's some stuff in the pipework. I'm excited to see where we go with it, release it, hopefully some webinars, hopefully some more video content. Yeah, things looking up. Plenty of guests sort of lined up and booked in, so you can avoid less waffle like this. Get some more books reviewed, get better, keep learning the structure, create a better life and all that shit. But yeah, peace.